10 minutes of Leinster quality proved to be the difference between the sides at Ashton Gate. My name is Mark, let's talk rugby. Bristol had a lot of the early ball in this one, but struggle against suffocating Leinster defence. It was a real blitz from them coming up hard, and Bristol found themselves going backwards. We then have a lengthy stoppage for treatment to AJ McGinty. He has to go off for an HIA and doesn't return, and Jenkins comes on for him. I thought Jenkins had a decent game given the circumstances. Henshaw then with a loose kick from Leinster, and Bears hit a lovely 50-22. James Ryan, though, gets up to compete in the line out and forces an error. Leinster then get pinged for an early engagement in the resulting scrum. It's the second time that they've done it, so it's a penalty. Bristol decide to go to the corner. They go to the tail of the line out. Bit messy, but their maul is going forward. Leinster managed to swarm them, though, and kill it, winning a turnover. Leinster then win a penalty at the resulting scrum. Genge pinged for an elbow on the floor, and Leinster clear. The scrums were just an absolute mess for most of the game, honestly. Leinster then beginning to grow into the game on attack, but Bears very aggressive in defence at the breakdown, especially winning turnovers and making it a real contest in there and not letting Leinster kind of settle into their normal play. Leinster then win a penalty themselves at the breakdown. They go up to the line into 22. Feels like this is danger for the Bears. Kelleher, Van der Fleer combine well out in the wide channels from the line out. Work it up to like a metre or so short of the line, but ball is knocked on as Van der Fleer was looking to present it. And, I thought Bristol actually did very well to halt him there because, Van der Fleer easily could have gone over, but decent defence from them, even though they got caught out initially. James Gibson Park then gives away an absolutely silly penalty at the scrum. Offside, don't know what he was doing, he was in between the legs of the 8 at the back of the scrum before the ball is even out. Leinster get a warning about the number of penalties that they're conceding, and then Jack Boyle, he's pinged for side entry in a maul, allows Bristol to kick up the line into the 22. Bristol set up the maul. Leinster tried to halt it, but it's illegal, and Kelleher goes to the bin. Just too many penalties given away from Leinster at that stage. Bristol decide to go for a tap penalty, but Leinster force 1 and then 2 knock-ons and clear at the second attempt. But we come back for a TMO check, and Max Deegan has tripped Harding, who was going through a gap. He goes to the bin, deservedly so, and Leinster down to 13 players. Bristol then go to the corner. Great chance to open the scoring. They use Mada on the wrap at the tail of the line out. He stopped just short of the line, but then Laheef forces his way over to score, converted by Van Rensburg, and it's 7-0. Bears in the lead. Leinster, though, hit back straight away, applying pressure in the 22, have a penalty advantage. Prendergast with a lovely chip over the defence. Lane can't claim it. It bounces up for Larmer, who goes over to score. Prendergast converts for 7 points all. Leinster then win another penalty, go up the line into the 22. Bristol hold in defence and force a knock-on. Some really big hits from them, but Leinster with 13 men are the ones applying all the pressure, and Bristol honestly feel relieved to get into half-time level as Leinster went up a few gears even though they had less players. Into second half then, Leinster bring on Barrett at the start of the half for Frawley, then also bring on their bench of forwards after 5 minutes of that second half, including Doris and Sneyman, and they start to kind of go up through the gears. Both teams get a warning though about the scrums, which, as I said, have been an absolute mess. Next infringement goes to the bin. Scrum goes down again. Leaf and Porter into the bin. Porter just on, but referee had enough of what was going on in there. Leinster then begin to up the pressure. Have a scrum just outside the 22 and a strike off the back of it. James Gibson Park to Barrett, who fixes the defence, feeds Prendergast, who goes through a gap and over to score. He converts his own try for 14 points to 7. Leinster then win a scrum penalty, go up to the line to just outside the 22. maul it into the 22. Then James Gibson Park snipes within 5 meters. It's recycled a few times before Barrett comes against the grain, sells a dummy, and over to score on his debut, converted for 21 points to 7. And in a couple of minutes, there's daylight between the teams. They then burst through the middle as they just keep on, attacking now. An offload puts Snyman through a gap. He carries deep into the Bears' territory, then finds Prendergast, who just eases his way away from the cover to score the bonus point try. Converts it himself as well, 28 points to 7. Leinster, lucky ominous in attack, finding lots of space, but then Van Rensburg does well to get in, turn it over, and set Bristol off. But there's a forward pass in the move. Bristol, they're out of it, but you feel like a try might change the complexion of the last quarter of the game. Leinster then win a penalty at the scrum. They go to the corner. Van der Fleer bursts off the back of the maul and over the line. On field, referee says it's held up, but we go to a TMO check and they get the right angle. You can see he's definitely got it down. Tries awarded, converted for 35 points to 7. Bristol then have a long period of possession in the Leinster 22, slowly grinding out the meters towards that line. They work close to the line, force a penalty. Leinster soaking up that pressure and begin to force them backwards after they tap the penalty. Bristol, though, doing well to keep hold of the ball. Leinster do almost turn it over, but knock it on. But then Leinster do win a penalty from the scrum, and their defence holds at that stage. But then they mistouch from the penalty. Bears work from left to right. Marmion puts a lovely grubber in behind, and it was Ibitoye. He gets there first and has the wheels to get in and score in the corner. Conversions missed, 35 points to 12. Then with 21 seconds to go, we go to uncontested scrums because Lahif has to go off injured and Chawatama is off for an HIA as well. So they bring the starting hooker back on. They have uncontested scrums. It ends up with the Leinster attacking. They go out to the right, give the ball to Ringrose, but he drops it into touch. So Bristol go quickly from that, end up with a ruck a few meters from their own line. Doris then, he's told to leave it, but he thinks the ball is out, so he picks it up, grounds it to try and score. Timo check, though, confirms that he was offside, but you kind of felt like, whether he was offside or not, I'm sure there's an angle that'll prove that one way or the other. But I think maybe the referee made the right decision because, as I think it was Harding was saying for the Bears, that because he said that the ball to leave it, the ball wasn't out, that the Bristol players didn't react, and there was no way. Like he said they would have, dove on the ball. It was out. So I think whether technically it was the right decision or not, I think he made the right decision. And the team will check from that to decide that Doris was offside and it's no try. So I don't really care, honestly, about whether it was, technically the right decision or not. I think the referee made the right decision in the spirit of what was happening there. The game then ends with Bristol kicking a penalty dead, full times 35 points to 12. So let's have a look at some of the stats from the game, and then we'll talk about each of the teams in turn. So first of all, tries, 2 tries to 5. Leinster just, they had that period where they just went up a few gears, and Bristol just didn't have it in them to reach that level. Bristol have been really good in the Premiership, but Leinster just have that ability to go to levels that a lot of other teams can't reach, and it was the case in this one as well, but only for a short period. Then from there, kick success 50% for Bristol, but young Prendergast 100% from the tee for Leinster, and really good to see from him. Meters made then 333 from Bristol, 441 for Leinster. In that second half, especially from about 50 minutes on, Leinster just started to find the key really to the Bristol defence, and were making more meters than they were early on in the game. Carries then 146 to 114. So you can see, Bristol averaging about 2.5 meters maybe per carry. Leinster up near 4 meters per carry. So that was kind of part of the difference between the teams. Clean breaks then 5 for Bristol, 11 for Leinster. Defenders beaten 20 for Bristol, 26 for Leinster. So not that many difference. Only 6 players beaten difference between the teams. But you can see the clean breaks. Leinster almost double. And it's one of these ones we talked about before where, sometimes a player, makes kind of a half break, beats a defender, but then with the likes of Leinster, to have that kind of scramble is really good. Somebody gets to him and prevents it being a break. And that happened a lot. Offloads then 15 for Bristol, 12 for Leinster. But it felt like Leinster's offloads had more impact, especially when Orgy Stamen come on to the field. Passes then 137 to 145. Possession Bears with 56% to 44 for Leinster, but they couldn't really do that much with it for much of the game. Territory then 48% to 52. So Leinster playing just a little bit more in the Bristol half. Defense then 103 tackles for Bristol, 156 for Leinster. Tackle success 70% for Bristol, really poor. 78 for Leinster. It's kind of around where Leinster are. Like mostly, for URC teams, you expect them to be around about 86, 87, kind of that kind of area, like mid 80s. But Leinster are always a little bit down. Normally, around about 82% or even down into the 70s, and it's because of the combination of the rush defense coupled with their ability to scramble behind it as well, means that even though they are missing some tackles, they're able to cover for it better than most other teams. Turnovers 1, then 7 each. Again, Bristol, I thought that was one of the better parts of their game. I thought Harding was very good at the breakdown. A few others there as well. Set piece then, lineouts 1, 16 for Bristol, 12 for Leinster. 80% for Bristol. I thought Leinster got up and competed very well, especially James Ryan. 92% for Leinster. Line out going a lot better than we've seen it at times this year for them. Scrums 1 then, 5 for Bristol, 8 for Leinster. But again, the scrum was an absolute mess. 83% scrum for Bristol and 67 for Leinster. But most of the scrums, whether they were free kicks, penalties, or the ball was out, were still a mess anyway. Then kicks from hand, 14 for Bristol, 22 for Leinster. I think Bristol, could have kicked a little bit more. I know they love to keep the ball in hand and, to run it and to look for that space that way. But, Leinster kind of, initially started with like 2 guys in the backfield. And towards the end, then they had just 1 in the backfield, 14 in the line, because they pretty much knew that Bristol weren't going to be kicking them the ball. Meters kicked then, not surprisingly, 4:14 for Bristol and 7:25 for Leinster. Leinster making much more hay from that. Retained kicks then 3 each. There weren't that many contests for the kicks anyway. On the breakdown then, rucks 1, 90 for Bristol, 64 for Leinster, and ruck success 97 to 96. So although Bristol were getting in there and they did win turnovers, Leinster were doing the same to them as well. Mauls then 5 for Bristol and 3 for Leinster, but Bristol at 60%, so they only won 3 of their 5 mauls anyway. So both teams winning 3 mauls because Leinster were 100%. And mauls meter gains 3 each, but it felt like in the first half, especially for Leinster, that the maul defence was poor. It led to the yellow card for Kelleher, and also led to the Laheath try as well for Bristol. So even though it looks even in the maul, I felt that Bristol definitely had the better of the two. Although you have to remember that Van der Fleur's try came off the back of a maul as well. Then Then on to the last stats we're going to look at is discipline. So penalties conceded, 8 for Bristol, which is not bad if you can stay in single figures. But normally you want to be a little bit lower than that. But look at Leinster, like 17 penalties conceded is way too many, and they're definitely going to have to improve their discipline. And in future rounds, especially if they want to top the pool. Yellow cards then, 1 for Bristol and 3 for Leinster. And Leinster had 2 at the same time as well. But yeah, that's our stats. Now let's have a look at talk about each of the teams. So starting with the home team, Bristol, as I said, they find it kind of hard going, finding space against the Leinster team. 1 try, was from a maul, and then or coming off a maul, and then the other try then was a clever bit of play from Marmion, where they actually kicked the ball, they kicked it in behind, and then they were able to get over in the corner. But for the most part, I felt like Leinster dealt with the Bristol attack pretty well. And for a lot of the game as well, like Bristol on defence actually dealt with Leinster fairly well. It was just like 2 periods where it really was costly for them, and we'll talk a bit more about that when we come to Leinster. But yeah, overall, I thought the defence was decent for most of the game, but most of the game isn't enough at this level. Especially against a team like Leinster, you've got to be on it for the full 80 minutes, and those lapses that happened were punished for them. But again, the set piece scrums were just a nightmare for both teams, and then I felt like Bristol's line out was under pressure as well. So some of their platform kind of stripped away from them there with those two. Very competitive though at the breakdown. You can see they were ambitious, trying to get to that edge. Where a lot of times against Leinster, in fairness, there is space, but Leinster, were coming up and stopping that ball, getting out to the width a lot. And then Bristol found themselves having to come back in field to try and secure the ball, and then not having the numbers out wide that they wanted to. And by the time they got out there, Leinster actually had the numerical advantage. But Bristol, you can see with their ambition that if they can get a couple of wins in this competition now, excuse me, they will make the knockout stages. But then already you're feeling like they're going to have to produce some performance at the last 16 because it looks like at this stage at least that they're gonna be away. And as well, to qualify now, because they've lost at home, they've got to win on the road probably too. We have seen teams, qualifying with just a 1 win and a few bonus points, but no bonus points from this game from them. So it puts a lot of pressure on performances now in the last 3 games for them to go through. And from riding high in the Premiership, I think they found that the step up to the top level of European rugby is a big step compared to what they've faced so far this season domestically. On to Leinster then. I felt like at the start they were dealing pretty well with Bristol, and Bristol started to get a bit of momentum. Leinster made a few errors, deservedly went down to 13. You can't really argue about those 2 yellow cards that they gave away in the 10 minutes leading up to half, or 10 minutes to go to half time. Conceded try, but then from there on absolutely dominated the period where they're down to 13, and got themselves back level. Could have even gone in at halftime leading, in that period. And there were 2 periods in the game where Leinster just stepped up their play and Bristol couldn't live with them. There was that 10-minute period just before halftime when Leinster only had 13 players, and that 10-minute period between 50 and 60 minutes where they scored, I think it was 3 tries. And basically the game was over as a contest then. They got another try after that. But, at that stage, it was just kind of putting the icing on top of the cake. But yeah, they were just able to go through the gears, and Bristol couldn't live with them. But, you have to look at the rest of the game as well. Again, scrum was very poor from Leinster as well. And, one of the things to talk about with Leinster is the inability for their front row to adapt in the scrum to the referee's interpretation. We've had it a lot, and it's not just, we talk about Andrew Porter a lot with it, but it's not just him. We've seen that today, where they couldn't, early engages, early engage, like the first or second scrum of the game, give away a free kick. They do it at the very next scrum and give away a penalty. And really, really stupid stuff like that. Taking away a lot of attacking up positions for them. But, their line-out has been poor for a lot of the season as well. I thought it went really well today, both on attack and defence. So that's definitely a positive for them. Then, the fact that Prendergast went really well at 10 in there beside Gibson Park, who is coming back into a little bit of form. Still don't think he's quite at his best. And then, Geordie Barrett coming on as well, having a really positive contribution at the second half. And, the fact that it wasn't, there's a lot of stars in that team. They brought a lot of stars from the bench as well, the likes of Doris and Stamen as well. But it wasn't the first, team that was playing, all the way through. They had a couple of young lads in there as well, and a couple of players who maybe, would be on the bench normally, or, fighting for a place in the 23. The likes of maybe, James Lowe out, and then, Jimmy O'Brien in, etc. But still, overall, a decent performance. I felt like, Conan did well too in that back row. And, he's such a luxury to have as well. The guy played, started 3 tests for the Lions. And any other, you think any other player of his quality would be like, if I'm not starting every week, I'm going somewhere where I can, But Leinster somehow able to keep the likes of him happy, to be a player who's rotated in and out of the team. And then they got Max Deegan in there as well. And then you look at the depth that aren't even in the 23 today as well, in that back row too. So, not perfect from Leinster. There's definitely a lot of improvement to come from them. We still haven't seen, it's been a long time since we've seen, an 80 minutes performance from this Leinster team. If they're to win the trophy this year, they're going to have to do it, at least once in this competition this year, if not, more than that. You can see already the likes of Toulouse being, exceptional already. So Leinster have that 10-minute period they had in the second half. That's the level they got to be able to hit. If they can get back to that final again, that's the kind of level that they need to produce to win the competition. But that's a long way off. It's only one game in now. It's a good start for Leinster, but there's a lot of hard work to go. One of the big things as well for them is going to be how they manage their squad through the URC and the Champions Cup. They've got to keep players fresh, but they've also got to make sure that players are battle hardened, because they've got the balance wrong, over the last 3 seasons, and it really has cost them. But again, good start, but we'll have to see how they go from here. Okay, so that's the end of that one. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one.